And we are back, and we're moving into a second conversation for today. As we promised earlier, he is the host of the very popular podcast, The Wild. He takes people across the world talking about outdoors and conservation and the wildlife that he gets to experience. And season 3 kicks off with his trip to Belize. We're joined by podcaster Chris Morgan. Good morning.
Good morning, Chris.
Good morning. How are you guys?
We're excellent. Thank you so much for joining us.
I feel warmer just seeing you guys. It's cold up here.
All right. As I told you earlier, we can send you some warmth, but it comes with the humidity, as you learned very well in the jungle, right?
Very much so. I don't think I've ever sweat so much in my life. I came home about 10 pounds lighter, I think.
All right. Well, Chris, before we talk about your time in Belize, let's talk a bit about what you've been doing with your podcast. So The Wild, you had the first 2 seasons. Did you have any idea it was going to be so wildly popular?
Actually, no. That's a great question. When we started it, it was just an idea that was hatched kind of at the same time with the production partners that I work with. That's KUOW, the NPR station down in Seattle. And they were looking for people to storytellers. And so I'd been on a couple of their shows on their radio. And they were looking for people that could tell stories in a podcast format. And at the same time, I was thinking, maybe I should try a podcast, because I'd focused on film and my conservation work before that. So it was just this natural fit. So we sort of gave it a whirl, thinking, you know, there's no shortage of stories about nature and wildlife. And there are so many incredible people involved with wildlife around the world. They're as interesting as the wildlife species themselves. And it just seems like, as a conservationist and a wildlife person, there's a story behind every tree. So we had no idea how much it would take off. People, especially now, these days, during these difficult times in the world, people seem to want a little bit of a hit of nature and feel connected again to the planet, to each other, to the real things in life, you know. So it's been a really interesting and wonderful ride. And we're just like literally today launching season 3, which feels really wonderful.
Yeah. In all the journeys that you've taken across the world, what led you to Belize?
You know, I'm smiling because your country stole my heart. I have a very good friend. His name is Paul Lister, and he has been talking to me about Belize for a long time, and keeps on saying, you've got to get down there. The place is amazing. It's packed full of wildlife. The people you will love. The place you'll love. It's the perfect size to explore, and it's just dense with wildlife. So he's been sort of haranguing me for a long time to get down there, and finally made it happen. His organization, the European Nature Trust, gave us a grant to get started and go down to Belize and travel and meet people and tell some of the stories from your country. So it wouldn't have happened without them. And, you know, before I went, I honestly didn't know very much about Belize. A lot of people that I've met don't know much about it. But first thing I do, I love maps, right? So I went out and I bought this, my map of Belize. I threw it on the wall and we scribbled all over it to try and get our heads around where we were going and what the stories were. Yeah. And it was absolutely mind-boggling because there were so many options, but that's how it all started. So we spent the month of December there, my partner and I. She produced the episode along with Matt Martin here. Yeah. And yeah, it was the beginning of an unknown journey into a place that I now have kind of fallen for.
Wow.
What was the experience like in terms of perhaps going back to friends and family and sharing with them what you've learned by way of the sights and sounds of Belize?
You know, you mean as far as like what people's response coming home with those stories that I've spoken to?
Yeah.
You know, people are, I think, amazed that a country like Belize exists in some ways. I can't believe that it's not more known as the hub of incredible wildlife. I know that it is, and especially the coasts and the corals, but people don't so much talk about the rainforest side of things. We were there for a month, and it took us at least 2 weeks to get even see the ocean, because we were focused on the rainforest. We were telling stories of the Scarlet Macaws and Jaguar was there. That's the first two episodes of the season, and I think people are just amazed to hear how diverse it is, how layered it is. There's some of the things that I came home feeling were, this is a place that is not only packed with wildlife and biodiversity and natural resources, water, but there was this sense of hope there as well, you know, that the people have. And I really fell for that, that sense of community and connection with the land and connection with nature, which is what our podcast is all about. So coming back with those stories, people are just hooked, that because it is so very different to where I'm from. I'm in Washington State right now, and I'm from England originally. And so Belize is about as far as you can get from those places in terms of its wildlife and the heat and everything, you know. So it's just a colorful, vibrant place, and that's what we want to get across in the podcast. So they're very, very immersive. We want people to feel like they're there with me in a place that I don't know, but I'm discovering with every step, literally. And we worked with some incredible people down in Belize that made it all possible. And the Scarlet Macaw story, which is today's episode, was just wonderful. We worked with an
released today.
Released today, And the organization we worked with, their Friends for Conservation and Development, Rafael Manzanero and his outfit, they were just amazing. I mean, that was the thing. There were so many doors opened to us getting down there, because the other thing I found about people in Belize is just how proud everybody is of the place, and rightly so. And so people welcomed us so warmly. It was great. So Rafael and his team took us out looking for Scarlet Macaws. On that little scene there's Rafael in the boat in the Chickabaw Forest, one of my favorite places there. That's a great scene. And we went looking for Scarlet Macaws and found them. They went flying over us, squawking as they went. And then we followed their migration pattern across the Maya Mountains down to the town of Red Bank, which I also fell in love with. And we told the story of a farmer there who is planting trees that in 3 years' time will bear the fruits that the Scarlet Macaws need, so he can bring tourists in to see the Scarlet Macaws, and they can stay at his bed and breakfast. And Mr. Florentino Soup, he was a wonderful guy. So all of these people are in the podcast. We interview them and learn about their lives and the Scarlet Macaws. And the Jaguars as well for episode 2. So,
and you were so touched.
I can't wait to come back. There's so many stories to tell there, you know.
I can tell. And you were so touched by Mr. Sub's work that, in fact, you are soliciting donations through your podcast for his tree planting project.
Exactly. You know, it amazed me because, you know, in the Chickabaw Forest, the story of the macaws, without giving any spoilers away, because I'd love people to listen to the podcast, and I'd love to know what Belizeans think about the podcast. We really would love to hear from people. But, you know, we started in the Chickabaw Forest with that, and there the birds are threatened by poaching and not so much deforestation because it's protected forest. But then as soon as they fly, it was found out that they fly over the Maya Mountains, and when they fly over the mountains, some of them come to settle in Red Bank at a time of year when they're feeding on the crop there, on the berry crop and the trees, on the fruit crops. But over there they need help too, because there is a little bit of deforestation going down. So Mr. Soub is planting these trees. So far he's had a small grant to plant 500 trees for Scarlet Macaws in the years to come. And so we've given him a small grant as well to continue doing that, and we want others to join as well, because him and his sons, there's a photograph of them. I was planting a tree with them right there. This was, he planted 500 trees, and then he planted number 501 with me, and I planted number 502. So it was just lovely seeing what he's doing there, and trying to encourage people's love for these Scarlet Macaws as he loves them.
Chris, it must be interesting, as much as we're seeing the video of your trip, and you do have this version, you have these videos on your YouTube channel. Podcasts are mostly just audio. How do you capture an experience of going into the Chickabaw and seeing macaws fly over your head, and be able to depict that for someone who's listening in any other part of the world who's never heard of Belize or knows what a macaw looks like?
It's really difficult, it's especially when you go to somewhere like Belize. I'm like, oh my goodness, you know, we need a full film crew here. We need to really, you know, you feel like you can't do it justice because it is so colorful and saturated and full of life there. And so we take lots of microphones and lots of tape, well, SD cards these days, right? And we came home with many, many hours of not just footage, but the sound, the audio sound for the podcast. And then the team here, Jim Gates and Matt Martin, they mix the episodes and create these beautiful soundscapes so that it's like it's in stereo. So you could literally I want people to be able to close their eyes and feel like they're there in the jungle in Belize with me. And so it's a case of just, I think, being really honest with how you go about it, and I'm someone who kind of wears my heart on my sleeve, so I'm quite open with things, and people feel like they know me and trust me through the podcast, and they feel like they're there. So it's got this very immersive feel to it, and I think you've got to distill a story down to its core root. Yeah. If you haven't got visuals to depend on, you've only got the sound of a podcast. You've really got to have a good story, haven't you, in order to keep your audience? And we work really hard at it. Every episode takes a heck of a lot of work, and many, many days and weeks of work, of preparation, then the field time. I mean, for the Scarlet Macaw and Jaguar episodes, we were as far north as Gallon Jug, and then we went to Coxcomb, Red Bank, Chickabool. So we were sort of in that core central sort of part of Belize, and traveled all over the country with the microphone in hand, trying to find the right sounds and people and characters so that the audience could feel like they were really there with us. But yeah, it's been something that I've gotten used to over the time because I'm more used to film, and it's a whole different approach. But I love it because it means you got to depend on a good story.
Yeah, and challenge yourself in a different way. Now,
yes.
You said that you planned your trip to Belize using a map, and you, I guess, zeroed in on jaguars, on macaws. When you got here, was there anything else that stood out to you that you said, man, I wish I had explored this topic more, or I have to come back and pursue this one?
Honestly, that's a really long list. But I mean, because everywhere, and this is the problem I have. I come back, and can you imagine my editor is like, oh my goodness, we've got so much tape, Chris. And that was just focused on macaws and jaguars. So, because I have a hard time focusing on just the one thing in a place that's got as much going on as Belize does. And so it was, I want to come back and do more. The toucans fascinated me. The bird life there was just incredible. And we had a window into that through the Scarlet Macaw story. I'd love to do one on crocodiles as well. So many. And then that's not even thinking about the coast. I mean, we took a day off and ended up going out to Laughing Bird, and I could not believe that place. You could do a whole podcast just on that one little national park out in the sea among the corals. I'm going to have to come back yearly, I think.
We're okay with that. We're definitely okay with that. So clearly your experience in Belize was one that resonated, and the story you were able to compile was one that you found so powerful that you're using it as your season premiere. So season 3, it starts today. You released the first one, the Scarlet Macaw story in Belize, and you're following up with the Jaguar. Tell us a bit more about how you decided to kickstart the season with your experience in Belize.
Well, honestly, this season is by far the most colorful, rich, charismatic place. And especially the story of the jaguars I'm fascinated with because I'm a big carnivore guy. I studied grizzly bears and other big carnivores around the world. So I'm drawn to things with big teeth and claws, you know, the big top predators and carnivores. The Scarlet Macaws came to my attention through Paul and another friend, Mark Wilkins, that work with with FCD down there and other organizations. And it was just something kind of unexpected. And it took us down this path that was just not just fascinating because of the bird, but fascinating because of the people there, because of Mr. Soob the farmer and his work, and these guys, the rangers that you can see there. That's Richard, who we interviewed, and you know, just the commitment of these guys. So it just floated to the surface as probably, I think it's like going to be the best episode of this season. Not to tout it before it's like the day it actually releases, because I want to see what people think about it, but it just felt like the norm, the right first episode to go with, and me and the team worked hard to sort of decide that, and it just made sense.
Now talk to us about you know, what your long-term hopes are. So you the season, the first release, the first episode for this season was released today. And as we said, that's the one on the Scarlet Macaw. And you're hoping that people will feel so touched by what they see, what they hear, that they'll also support the work of Mr. Subdare in Red Bank. When it comes to the conservation side of you, I mean, is this something that you always find yourself gravitating towards, that you discover the story, but then you also see that this is an opportunity for you to help as well?
Actually, it happened the other way around, really, because I'm an ecologist first and foremost, and my work is all in conservation. So then I'm always trying to figure out how to share my passion and the things that I'm learning about our planet with others. And so that's taken me through a journey of being a scientist first, and then working on education projects, and then doing films. And I hosted films for National Geographic and BBC and PBS and others. And it was all about just trying to reach people. I've always been one of those people who's drawn to nature and feels connected with it. It's my happy place, really. I'm happiest when I'm in the woods on my own. And it's something that I always want to share with people, because I think that nature is good for people. The people of Belize have this amazing connection with nature, more than almost anywhere that I've been. And I think that we can learn from that at a time when nature is threatened and when it needs our help. And we can benefit by protecting nature. Nature benefits from us protecting it. But honestly, at the end of the day, we need nature much more than it needs us. The planet will be fine without us, if that day ever came. But in the meantime, if we can be really good stewards of the planet in a positive, optimistic, hopeful way, then that's the key thing. And it's a country like Belize that gives us an example of what that microcosm can be. You know, how can people be connected with nature? I mean, I read that over half of Belize is protected. That's amazing. I think 13% of the United States is protected ecosystem. Half of Belize is protected. That's incredible. So it's this test study. It's this example of how it can be done, with people connected with nature, protecting nature. Belize is the hub of water in Central America, and that's because of the forests and the rainforest ecosystem, and it's because the country has been smart enough to protect these treasures. And we can all learn from that sort of stuff. So it starts with conservation with me, and then how do we tell stories to engage people, get people rallied, because we're all in this together. We're one species on this planet, right? Yeah. And we need to rally together to protect it and look after ourselves in the meantime.
Now, Chris, I know you really want Belizeans to tune in to your podcast in general, but especially on these episodes. Why?
Partly because, you know, I love connecting with local people wherever I work in the world, and that's what it's all about. And I aim to come in just open-eyed and open-eared in this case. I want to learn from people. I want to. My biggest hope is that I do justice to Belize and its wonders through these podcasts, through these first 2 episodes. And I sometimes visit places. You know what it's like when you're an outsider coming into somewhere. You're looking at it, going, "Wow, this is the most amazing place on earth." And the local people can be around you saying, "Oh, well, really? You know, I live here. I take it for granted." I think I do the same where I live. You know, people come. And that's the thing, like everybody appreciating it in Belize, what you have down there, because it is very, very special.
All right. That's good. That's good. I'm excited.
Yeah. All right. So as you said, the first episode was released today on your podcast. It's called The Wild. And the Jaguar episode will be released a week from now.
That's it. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
The Jaguar episode is really interesting as well, because it's a journey. It's following in the footsteps of the Jaguar and what needs to be done to make sure that the populations of the Jaguar from the north to the south remain connected through what's called the Maya Forest Corridor, right in the middle there on the main highway. And you know, as things are developed there, it kind of can separate the Jaguar population. So there's a lot of people working to ensure that that separation doesn't occur, so that the Jaguar can walk from the north to the south of Belize through the rainforest and, you know, not get hit on a highway or not get killed by somebody, or, you know, so there's lots of layers to it, but it makes for a really cool, interesting journey. And the footsteps of these big cats, you know.
Give us a bit of a tease. Did you have any close encounters?
Okay, so one time, no spoiler alerts, right? But one time I was at Las Cuevas and I went to the bird observation tower there, and it was at night. We wanted to sort of get the sounds of the evening chorus of birds. So came down in the pitch dark, slipping down the steep muddy bank there, coming down from the observation tower. And I had my headlamp on, and I looked into the forest. I'm like, what is that? And there were these two giant eyes looking back, reflected by my headlamp, and I couldn't make out what the animal was. So I did what you're probably not supposed to do, but I ran in towards it and got my other flashlight out, and it just sort of blinked once, twice, three times, this big animal, and sort of turned around and evaporated into the jungle. And I'll never know if it was a puma or a jaguar. I think it was one of those two, but I'll never know. And that was kind of cool, keeping it mysterious like that, you know. It's like, nice. So it drove me crazy, but it was almost like, it was like being in some kind of interesting, surreal dream, thinking, wow, that could have been a jaguar, and it was just 20 feet away from me, you know.
And I think you're probably the only person who sees the eyes light up in the jungle and run towards it. So you probably win some sort of award for that as well.
For stupidity, maybe, yeah.
Well, Chris, it has been a pleasure hearing from you. And I think, you know, one of the final things that you've said is really what's so important. Very often we take for granted what we do have here in our country. And it takes some people coming in for that first-time experience to just remind us of what we do have and why it's important to protect. Looking forward to hearing today's episode and next week's episode on the Jaguar as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart to the people of Belize for making us feel so welcome. It really touches me. It gets me emotional, actually, because it was such a special experience. So thank you, Belize.
All right. And thank you, Chris. Remember, you can download or listen to his podcast. It's called The Wild by Chris Morgan. And you can hear or even visit on the YouTube channel the videos from Belize where he finds out more about the Scarlet Macaws and the Jaguars. With that, we're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we'll be closing off today's show.